All right, there's still a few people that are trickling in, but we're gonna get started here in a second. Um, so I'm Ryan. I'm one of the organizers, and it's my privilege to introduce my Nate Case, who happens to work at Datadog, which is really funny because I work at New Relic, which is a direct competitor. By the way, we're hiring in our security department, so just come see me if you are interested. Um, And so Nate is a security advocate at Datadog. He's also a well-known speaker. He said in his profile that he's a builder, so I'm actually really keen to find out what kind of things you build. But yeah, so Nate, take it away.
Not on. Hello. All right, so I will take the position of security is something we shouldn't compete on. Product and features are. So totally cool. So thank you. And thank you to the, what's his name again? Legend. He is. Oh, thank you. Talk's over, we're out. All right, everybody, so here we go. Wow, that's loud. So I'm Nathan Case. Generally, I do talks on, there we go. Thank you. So hey, I'm Nate. I generally do incident response. I do talks on incident response. I do technical talks on how to get out of it. I do kind of front talks where we're getting into like what happened last night, last week, and how bad it really was. I do a lot of talks on scary stuff that, realistically you want to avoid. Today is not that talk. As I have been the janitor of the internet for many, many years, I have learned many, many things, and this talk is basically a culmination of that knowledge and my effort to solve a deeper problem that I feel is hitting our, I'm going to call it society. I'm going to call security society. That's the box that we're all in. So let's do this first. How many people here are security people? How many people here are developer people? Oh, hey, we've actually got a couple of you. Cool. How many people are operations people? All right. If I ask for somebody from development and operations to come sit in the front row, would you feel awkward? Would anybody not feel awkward and be willing to try? Because I'm going to ask you questions, and I'm going to point you out and kind of use some of your responses as I go through this talk. Would that be all right? Who wants to do that? Anybody? I promise to give you a candy thing from the candy store across the street after this if you do it. Nobody? I'm just going to point you out later. Please, feel free. All right. So generally I talk technical, generally I do other stuff. Today we're not going to talk technical. Today we're going to be talking about semantics. Yay! Who wants to go back? Whoa. Who wants to go back to 8th grade grammar? Yes? Oh, well, you are just the guy, aren't you? So as we talk about semantics, we go black. That is weird. Okay. We talk about words that have meaning, right? How many times have you actually had somebody discuss something with you and you say, X, and they go, yes, X. And then we all look at each other and go like the opposite way and do the whole like Monty Python two guards getting out of the groom's room, and hilarity ensues. So that's what we mean by semantics here. We're talking about things that have impacts on the ideas, the logic that we're going to use as we go forward and do things in our life, right? Should I be worried about this, or are we good to go? All right, fine. So we're going to talk about the way that ideas actually have impact on things. Earworms. Who's heard that term before? Okay, so I got that term from a book in the late 80s, and it's just kind of stuck with me. The concept that I could say something to you and it would stick with you for the rest of your life, and ideally drive things that you do. And this presentation, the bluff, the bottom line up front, is a statement that we as security have become very, very insular. And the words that we use mean things to us that they probably don't mean to other people. And so when we talk to them, when we talk to development, when we talk to operations, we're using a very specific word that we have feelings and emotions about. And those words mean very different things to them. And so consequently, we have a lot of misunderstanding to begin with before we even get to solving the problem. For me, I've seen this a lot when we go through incident response because everybody's at a heightened emotional state and nobody's really thinking about the things that they do. So the semantics of the issues, the semantics of the problems become a real issue for everybody in the room. Now, to do this, I'm going to go all the way back to well, I'm not going to ruin that for you. I'm going to go all the way back to where the security world that we exist in began, all right? And I'm going to ask you to do the etymology of the word security. Who likes the word security? Yeah, it's a good word. Yeah, it's okay. So realistically, when you look at the word security, it's actually from the Latin. It's pretty old. Anybody want to guess what security actually means? Security equals free from care. Does that seem like a reasonable definition to you? Does that seem like the semantics of the word security actually match? See, personally, I would have used free from risk. Free from, anybody have an opinion? What would you say? Free from vulnerabilities. I'm going to go with risk there, vulnerability being another word for that. Free of mitigations, maybe? Any other happy words that we want to stick in there free of? Free of hackers, free of attacks? Threats, ooh, threats a good one. Free of threats. So if this is actually the meaning of the word security when we get down to the inside of it, we have to argue with ourselves, debate with the room. The semantics of the word security by itself, are, well, on the upside, I hope I practiced this enough to give it without having to look at the slides. Yep, there we go. Now, getting confused and going on from this, the point of this slide really is to get to the point where we can all agree that security probably doesn't mean the same thing to all of us that it should mean. We all look at the word security and see different things. We load it with the intents that we have, the past that we have, the things that are going on right now. Now, cybersecurity is a word that Gizmodo says was made in 1989. I didn't do an etymology of cybersecurity because it's really kind of a made-up word anyway. What would you think was the intent of the word cybersecurity when they made cybersecurity? Sell more things. I've got sell more things. This feels like it's Family Feud all of a sudden. Anybody else want to give an idea? What does the word cyber elicit in you? Go ahead. Cyber? Okay. Go ahead. AOL chat rooms. So, say again. Tron. I'll give you Tron. So the intent, according to the people at Gizmodo, when they made this word, controlling security, was partially to do exactly what you said, sir, but also to elicit a little bit of fear. Does the word cybersecurity elicit a little bit of fear? Does it make your gut twinge up a little bit if you're a developer? Yeah, more like revulsion? Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at. As a security expert, I really don't like this word. I think it's made up and it doesn't really work very well. But I think the point of this word is that they made it to give a little bit of fear to begin with. So now all of a sudden we have a word that we don't really understand added to another word that we really don't understand that's supposed to give a little bit of fear to the people that work with us. This is beginning to feel like a failing concept. Who knows what creeper is? Yay, where did you learn about creeper, sir? Minecraft. Different creeper. I'm the creeper, catch me if you can. Bob Thomas, 1971, though not the Wendy's Bob Thomas. You should have learned about this in your probably CIS 200 level class. So this is the first moment that we decided that we were going to do something nefarious on the net. Now, admittedly, the net here is a COBOL system that is not really what the network would be in today's terms. But still, he did write something that did take up resources and transmit itself across the network to other things. It was closely followed by Reaper, which indeed has no cool tagline, but Ray Tomlinson actually created a system to remove Creeper shortly thereafter. And from this moment, we have our first cat and mouse game ever. We really haven't moved much beyond this, frankly. But it goes back further. If we go back even further and we end up in World War II, we have things like Bletchley Park, we have Alan Turing, we have Colossus, we have Enigma. And these words really are the things, these places, these times, these events are the things that began cybersecurity, that began security as we know it in information security. Do we actually understand who this person is? Anybody know this person? No. This is Violet Sobat. Sabo. Sorry. She was a strawberry picker and a switchboard operator. Anybody know what she did? Apparently there's a black screen and we're never going to find out. So Gray showed up to SOE and was a strawberry picker and an operator. I think all of these words that I've had my teams before use on new candidates into security teams would have been used about Violet. Now, I'm making this point that I intend to match later in the talk. And I'm not here to give you a D&I discussion about how we need to include more diversity into security, but rather I'm looking to say, in 1941, give or take, we were actually doing things that were very different than we are today. We were letting people that were strawberry pickers and telecom operators into security at large. So, a la the SOE and OSS. We've all heard stories about the SOE and OSS in World War II. You probably read a couple of books about them. This is my personal favorite book that actually mentions Violet a little bit. Really cool book if you're looking for something to read. And a lot of the words that we use today for encryption and different things that go into security are actually talked about in this autobiography. So Violet was actually executed at a Nazi concentration camp in 1945. She was one of the best assets the Allies had against the Nazis at the time. And because of that, they actually did a couple of movies and books about her. This is, again, the lady that was considered the strawberry picker and telephone operator. She got as far into security as you can get and did some of the best work that you could do at the time. Now, is this information security? A little bit. We use the same terms. We're coined from the same stuff. How does it mean? What does it mean today? If we look at a chief information security officer and we take the work that we did at Bletchley Park and we think about the things that happened there, how did we get from there to here? How do we get from the words meaning one thing, and we all agree in one camp in 1941, and in 2023, we have words that we don't agree on the meanings of? Well, we had things like creeper and reaper. I love this screenshot, by the way. As we talk about things that actually occurred, we've started having things where a developer will write something and an operationalist will try to do something to fix it, and a security person will come down, chase it down, and then write anti-malware to fix that thing, right? And this is a pattern that we keep seeing over and over and over again. And because of that, we came up with silos. We came up with skill sets that we felt developers, security folks, and operations folks all have, right? And that's kind of where we come from. So if we go all the way back to the beginning in 1941, do we feel like there were any developers in 1941? Actually, there were. They wrote things like the bomb, the thing that actually decoded the Enigma. They wrote the Colossus. They didn't do, admittedly, code on a keyboard. It was decidedly turning knobs and making sure that things were running through on punch cards. But admittedly, it was still development. So how did we get from a place where developers, operationalists, and security people were working on the same thing with the same words, but were there operationalists and security people in 1941? What do you feel the security person's job was in 1941? Carry a rifle, sir, you are correct. They were the gates, the guards, the guns, right? Your security officer in Bletchley Park was the nice gentleman that sat in the middle of, I think, Building 4, and actually just made sure that the women that were working at Bletchley Park, because it was a mostly female organization, were going home on the trains in order so that the Germans would not notice that women that were taller were going out together, because we needed taller women to actually get to the top of the bomb, to be able to change the dials. So that's information security at its best, right? Okay, so how did these people all work together? Why are the words so screwed up now? So if I say risk, in my mind, these are the words that I think of: physical injury, attack, failure. Now, sir, you agreed. When I say the word risk, what do you think of? Loss of working time? Impact and likelihood? Now, I've run physical security, so I think mine are a little bit skewed. But anyone else? Reward. Agreed. So if we take a very simple word like risk, and we all agree that we are vastly different about it to begin with, and we agree in 1941 we had a better way to communicate these things, and I think that's where we're at, how do we get to where we ought to be from here? Well, to begin with, we have to understand where we are. As it is right now, according to Deloitte, a CISO, the goals to have this CISO do their job the right way would be mostly strategy. I think that's a surprise. As someone who's actually been a security person before, I was actually betting on 41%. That is the current standing assumption for most people in the CISO role right now. They assume that 41% of their time should be spent doing that. And it looks like the rest of the company thinks only 22% of the time should be doing that, and most of the rest of your time should be doing a lot of other things. That leads to this slide. Who hates Venn diagrams? All right, so in my estimation, we have three types of CISOs. The first person that is a CISO that I think most of us think about is a technical CISO. The second kind is a communications CISO, and then a dedication CISO. Okay? If we talk about a technical CISO, that's somebody like me. I have a deep technical understanding of security. I understand security all the way down to its guts, and I try to enforce the technical options that I see, the technical possibilities that I see on plans for the future, and engage my company in ways to technically keep them safe. Is this the right answer based on the last slide? Nope. Communications, the human router. You are the person that got hired into the CISO role because you like to talk to people. We're on time now? What do you mean, like we have no more time, or like what? Okay. So communications. So as we get into communications and we talk about communications, this is the CISO that is going to help everybody, that knows everybody, that doesn't actually know anything technically. Dedication and loyalty CISO. This is the CISO that actually ends up being the person that is given the job. How many people have been rotated into CISO or seen somebody be rotated into CISO? It's kind of a scary thing to see. In my experience, I would have told you the dedication CISO is actually the least likely to succeed. However, if we look at the technical CISO and we look at communication CISO and most of the other types of CISOs and the way they got the job, they have a longevity of 8 months to 1.5 years right now. That's kind of a horrible way to look at this. And as we talk about the semantics of the word security, and we talk about the way security is viewed, and again, we go all the way back to 1941, is your security officer doing the right thing right now if the average security officer has a life expectancy of 1.5 years at the high end? Burnout rate currently for CISOs is at 48%. Security team burnout is at 85%. Does it feel like we're focusing on the right things? So currently, it's almost impossible to hire security people as well, by the way. So not only are we having a hard time communicating internally how we do these things, but we're having a hard time convincing people that we're right. Now, when we look at these silos and we add security to the silos that we have, I'm going to suggest that we made a mistake. And I'm going to suggest that this was actually a plan for failure. We made a mistake in the 80s when we decided to start splitting security out into its own silo. Originally, we had two silos. We had development and operations. Operations was the people that put the air conditioners on the mainframes and made sure they didn't melt. And developers were the ones that did the punch cards. We went ahead and added security. Now, development is pretty straightforward. That's an obvious skill. Do you know how to do a punch card? Yes? No. Pretty straightforward. I don't, but you do know how to write Go, don't you? Operations was pretty straightforward. Do you know how to fix an air conditioner? Now, there's an obvious deviation there. Do developers also happen to know how to fix air conditioners? Potentially, yes. What is the obvious deviation for security? I know security stuff. I hate developers. Do I have a gun and am I standing by a door? In 1941, that would have been the differentiation. Now, today, I'm going to argue that this isn't actually a thing. This is a made-up thing. The reality is if you write good code, it should be secure, correct? If you do good operations, should it be secure? Should you do operations that are intentionally unsecure? So if security is part of both of the other two pillars, then are we really talking about security having its own pillar? And why are we doing this? Because all of a sudden, we've come up with an insular group of people that really aren't free from care, and they really aren't making anyone else free from care, because trust me, your developers hate you as much as you hate them. So if we look at this, and let's take a step back again, right now there are 84.4 million people that consider themselves professionals in the United States, and there are 1.2 million people that consider themselves security people in the United States. That leaves you at 1.3% of the entire populace in the United States. You are outnumbered, and oh yeah, by the way, this is 4.25 of the entire world's population, because all of the attacks that you suffer and have to deal with as security people come from the United States, right? So, okay, we're outnumbered. We've decided to split security into a number of different silos that really don't make sense. And we've decided to go ahead and do things like try to keep people out of security because they don't understand some of the words. So what do we do? Well, if we go back to the thoughts that we have here and we look at the silos that we have now, I'm going to suggest that if we change development, development is actually something that makes something, right? They're doing work. They're creating a thing. That thing probably ought to have security built into it, right? If we look at this, who likes this graph? It's a pretty rough graph. And to be fair, on this projector, it's even worse. Do we see anything in this graph that makes sense and we think is a bad thing? I'm going to go and tell you because we're almost out of time and I don't want to get to the point where and then we just disappear. So as we look at this, we can begin to see things that, hey, that's awful, that's awkward, and hey, down here, we actually have this line that's way over on the right. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, if I'm the developer and I'm looking at my Kubernetes cluster, this means that my Kubernetes cluster is beginning to fail. Is a development person supposed to be looking at the operations of their Kubernetes cluster? Maybe. We call that DevOps. It's a good thing. Yay! Okay. If I'm an operationalist, should I be looking at this screen? Who knows what this screen is? This is a SIM. I am now looking at the vulnerabilities inside of the system. Should my operationalists be looking at the vulnerabilities inside of, in this case, I apologize, I'm using Datadog. Yes, I work for Datadog. This is the easiest place I have a demo environment for. So as I take this apart, should my operationalists be doing security operations things? Yes, we call that SecOps, right? Should my security people be looking at Redis? Why not? It's a good thing to have security people looking at Redis. I like dashboards, don't you? So is this SecDev then? Or is this DevSec? Or is this DevSecOps? Or are we just going to come up with new words next week that are going to mean the exact same things? I think that's probably fair. So what I'm going to suggest is that the way forward is recapturing security. We need to remove words that begin to push people out. And I'm not trying to do a D&I talk here. This isn't about including people that are different than you from a religious, racial, gender type of a thing. This is talking about much, much wider than that. We want to go bigger than that. We want to include people that I know you hate them, but they're the devs, and you need to learn to love them, right? And to do that, I'm going to suggest that we need to stop having security in general. We need to actually start including security back into development. And we need to do that by making security approachable. And we'll get there. And the words need to not sound militaristic because there are plenty of people that don't enjoy militaristic words. We need to build a new dictionary. Who's built a dictionary for nomenclature at their place of business? What are the most important things you can do so that everybody agrees on what the words mean and why they're there? Define a process to change. It's okay to change, and we need to embrace it. And as security geeks, we need to deal with the fact that things are going to have to change. Why? Because we are 1.4% at best of all of the people in the company right now. We cannot succeed. We will fail. The way we've got it set up right now is a plan to do that. We need to change. This is the way to do it. And we need to embrace the fact that it's going to change. There are many of us that are of my age and older that don't necessarily like change a horribly lot. And so we're coming to a point where we need to begin to look at that. We need to engage. We need to get with the development teams, get with the operations teams, open up the things that we need to look at, and give them visibility so that they can see it as well. DevOps plus Sec. You'll note that I didn't go DevSecOps. Why? Because Dev and Ops are actually two specific things, and security is something that we should be doing anyway. Right? So as we begin to put this back together, it shouldn't be the security people leading a discussion. It should be DevOps leading a discussion. If you happen to be one of the leaders in the discussion, that's great, and you happen to focus on security, again, cool. But it's not about security playing gatekeeper. It's about security giving visibility as much as it can to everybody else, and as much wisdom and help as they can to everybody else. And not from a better than you point of view, but from a, I am just like you with another focus. Observability is key. Now this is going to sound a little funny, but the reality is that we all disagree on a lot of these words because a lot of these words are just thoughts to us. So the nomenclature that we use, the semantics to the things that we have, need to be based on physical realities, and that's why I showed you those pictures. If you look at a specific thing and I say, that thing right there is broken, is there a semantic argument about that thing being broken if it's red and flashing on and off? I'm going to go with no, it looks broken. So if we start from something like that and build out, I'm going to argue that observability and physical things that you can share across security, across operations and development is a really good way to start this reintegration of security into development and operations. Security is an architecture choice. Security is not something you tag on the end. Security is something that you have to build for, plan for, and deliver to. That means we have functional things. It has to be a functional requirement in the stories that we build. It has to be a team effort, not a heroic effort. Just because this guy up front with the red shirt says red team and he's the guy that does all of the security stuff, I happen to know him, so I'm picking on him, but because he happens to do a heroic effort at work, that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to make him do that. And realistically, if we're doing security the right way, everybody should be doing it together. It's not fast. Security is not something that happens overnight, that happens tomorrow. When I have to do incident response, it is overnight, it is tomorrow, and it is scary as heck. Real security, long-term security happens slowly. Reliability, or response, is a community goal. It's not just something that one person needs to do. It's something we all need to do together. Everybody needs to be included in response, including the dev team and the operations team. So, I've gone a little over. I apologize. In closing, build shared observability, build a security architecture program, build your own dictionary, and use OSS Champions program. And I've got a different thing that I'll show at some other time, apparently, on a different slide. But if you want to go ahead and give feedback for the talk, I'd love to get it. Please feel free to scan the barcode. I swear it's not going to rickroll you. It will indeed go to where it's supposed to. Thank you. Sorry I went over.